Productive Pastor 65 with Michael Whittle from Pulpit AI. Friends, we're back, episode 65 of the podcast. You might remember that last episode we talked about 4 ways that I'm using AI, artificial intelligence, in ministry. And one of the things I shared on there was about how I'm using it to import sermon audios to try to get some prompts and stuff to use for different parts of ministry, for discipleship questions, for small group stuff, Facebook posts, all those sorts of things. And in that episode, I mentioned Pulpit AI, a new tool that I was super excited about. And I've been talking back and forth with Michael Whittle, one of the guys from Pulpit AI. And after the episode was recorded and uploaded, all that kind of stuff, he reached out and said, hey, I'll run a sermon through our engine for you and give you the outputs. And I ran the exact same sermon that I actually have links to in the show notes from that last episode through to see what they could do, what they said, all the sorts of stuff. And I was absolutely blown away. And I already wanted to have Michael on the show, but after seeing the output from that sermon, I realized I've got to get him on ASAP, and I changed my production schedule, got Michael on, and we're about to have this fantastic conversation, not just about Pulpit AI and how it works and how it's different from ChatGPT, but also how their strategy is not about uploading a sermon so pastors can go viral, but about how this is actually an incarnational tool that they have. So you can cruise over the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/065, and you can get the outputs for the sermon that they sent me back. I'll also link the outputs from the ChatGPT version of the exact same sermon, and you can see how the two differ. But we're going to go straight into this conversation with Michael. I'm not going to keep you hanging around long, whatever. And so let's dive into this conversation with Michael Whittle from Pulpit AI. Right, so I'm here with Michael Whittle of Pulpit AI, and y'all, I am stoked to have this conversation. Michael, I feel kind of bad that I kept saying, we'll wait to that, because I've just learned. I'm going to let it roll here.
I love it. That's brilliant. It's good to be here, Chad, man. This is fun. I'm jealous of your bookshelf.
Oh, I've got a book problem. It's so bad. It's so bad.
I do too. I'm literally like looking at the room you're in. I live in Los Angeles. And so, our place is probably about the size of that whole room. But before we had our kids, I had my own like little office and the whole wall was full of books. Now all those books are in storage because there's literally no place for them. So yeah, well, I'm looking at you with envy.
That's the perks of Central Louisiana versus Los Angeles, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly.
So tell us a little about who you are, because I said earlier, I've been listening to your podcasts for a few months, and then about halfway into, well, not halfway, but a couple weeks after I saw Pulpit AI got released, I realized, okay, these are the same people. I'm already a fan of what they're doing. So just kind of talk about, like what ecosystem you're living in right now.
Sure. Yeah. So, gosh, to make a long story short, I'm a pastor and an entrepreneur. So I kind of simultaneously helped really my best friend, who's also my pastor, plant a church here in Los Angeles in 2015. And have been honestly just on the ground building that church since then, kind of in a bunch of various capacities: location pastor, teaching pastor, served on every single team you can think of. And then also have been for the last decade or so building tech startups predominantly in the media advertising space. And so about 18 months ago, we just honestly, to fulfill kind of some needs of our own, launched a little media company called Vast. And really the idea behind that was just a connected network of podcasts similar to like The Ringer or Barstool Sports or Morning Brew. Our whole thing was like, we want to build the Barstool Sports of Christianity. So we thought most Christian media was overly inspiring and underforming, and maybe not quite as authentic as we wanted it to be. So honestly, we just hit up a bunch of our friends who create content and said, hey, let's just kind of see what we can do here. And so we've been doing that for about 18 months. And then, about 3 months ago, through honestly just a series of trying to solve some internal problems, we were producing between 8 and 12 podcast episodes a week. And I was kind of running myself ragged, trying to build and run the business. And, obviously in the economy we're in, always trying to spend as little money as possible. And so couldn't find an AI tool that would allow us to, basically just upload a podcast episode, turn that podcast episode into things like show notes and summaries and all that kind of stuff. And so we kind of decided to build our own, and have partnered with some incredible technologists who have been building out this model that we're using for the last 5 years. So that's a long story short. We launched PulpitAI just kind of on a whim. We built a landing page while the product was being built. I sent out a tweet, and it kind of blew up one Saturday on Twitter, and so here we are.
Yeah, yeah. I remember seeing it and thinking, "Oh my goodness, this is great," because we were talking earlier, my ministry context now, the church I pastor is like 15 people country church. They bought their first lapel microphone 6 months ago. So like in that context, this tool was something that immediately I was like, I don't know how much I can use this. But like you, when ChatGPT hit, I go to podcasting. I'm like, okay, how can, and I was finding these like super lengthy workarounds. And then another tool came out trying to give you podcast summaries. And I can't remember what it was called. They overwhelmed the servers instantly. And then I saw it shut down a month and a half ago because they said that Google Bard can do the same thing. But I know so many
I know which one
past
you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, and I know so many pastors that I talk with, especially younger pastors, will tell me, the administrative load that they feel right now is one of the most stressful things they have. And so I immediately ask, what administrative load are you talking about? Because everybody defines that differently. And so many say, well, just the communication side of ministry, just the communication. There's this, especially post COVID, there's this tension to keep your social just cranking. And for years, people have said, well, pull it out of your sermons, pull it out of your sermons. Well, even that can be confusing for folks. And that's kind of a lead in, but like give everybody the lowdown on what Pulpit AI does when you import that sermon into it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I guess just quickly to piggyback off what you said, that's really the heart behind what we're doing. So philosophically, why we're doing what we're doing is, we were building this sort of media company and got under the hood of like the world of the Christian influencer, right? The creative content in Christianity online. And honestly hated what we saw. Right.
Yeah.
I'm a local church pastor. And so the amount of people say, hey, I've been listening to this podcast or reading this blog or signing up for this newsletter. And look, not all of it's bad, right? Like there are people with voices that should be out there reaching the masses online. But I started to go, man, I think every local church needs a digital signal to their congregation, right? Throughout the week. Pastors are, in my opinion, the most faithful content creators there are, right?
Yeah.
Because they're creating with their local people that they pastor week in and week out in mind. And so that's honestly the heart behind it, is to go, hey, how do we help pastors have operational leverage to create this stuff? But also, like, every pastor should be able to speak to their people through content during the week. And that's a really hard thing to do administratively. So that's kind of why we started the thing. I think right now what the product does is you can upload the audio of a sermon. And our AI model that we use was built to analyze audio, right? So the model that we're using has been trained by about 500,000 hours of podcast listener data, right? So it's its own proprietary model that basically extracts out of that audio ultimately whatever you want it to extract. So that could be anything from a blog post, a daily devotional, discussion questions for small groups, social media posts, course outlines. We're right now trialing with the right amount of audio, sermon audio, we can turn it into, 100 to 200 page book that's about 85% of the way ready to go. Wow. So any content that you would want to create, this will do it for you. And look, we say, it's AI generated, human perfected. So this is not intended to just straight up be copy and pasted. We do think there is some editing that's going to need to go into this content. But yeah, for the most part, we just want to help pastors repurpose their sermon. They spend some spend 30 hours a week writing a sermon, and then they preach that sermon. Sometimes it may live on YouTube, but all of that content just kind of dies on the floor, so to speak. And so, yeah, that's our biggest purpose is how do we help pastors repurpose that sermon that they spend so much time creating every week.
Yeah. And you even say that. I don't want to spend too much time dwelling on this, but I know that y'all caught a little bit of trolling over some people talking about the pragmaticism, I guess, of this, not necessarily the any other piece, but I've got a friend that does this, and I remember being sat down as a young Methodist pastor in front of one of our denominational leaders, and he literally sat down and said, "Okay, I'm going to teach you how to turn a sermon series into a book." And so just the idea of repurposing, it's happened inside of ministry. It's happened inside of ministry communication for a long, long time. And it's just, I remember after I hearing that, I remember trying to turn a sermon series into a manuscript one time a few years ago. And it was so freaking hard, even with legitimate manuscripts in front of me, was just realizing, okay, this is too difficult. So that is super cool that you'll have the ability to turn to that, the 100, 150 pages, 200 pages of content, because that just allows it, rather than being, and I think this is the flip that pastors probably might be going through. This isn't about using your sermon to make yourself famous. This is about using the content that you've created for your own ministry context to just leverage deeper and deeper and deeper into that context.
Correct.
I don't know if
100%. And that's the thing that if I can just say, that's the thing to me that really grieves me about all of these AI tools is when I see people in the body of Christ talking about using them to want to do things like go viral. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But I think for us, our product is meant to help churches resource and disciple their people. And I think you're exactly right. Most pastors just want to be able to create this content for their people, not to build a following or not to, do any of that. And so our product will be built for that purpose, not for the purpose of, the other direction.
Yeah. I'm right. One of the best books on mission I have ever read. I can't remember the name of it now. It's back there on the massive wall, and I won't take our time to go find it. But John Tyson and Susie Silk wrote is an internal book to give out to Church of the City.
I've got all of them. Yep.
Yeah. And we were visiting there before pandemic, and that was their visitor gift.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh my goodness, you're giving me
it's
125.
It's funny you say that.
Yeah.
We literally during COVID bought all of them, and our church did, and sat down and said, this is what local churches need to be able to do. This is incredible. So shout out to the Church of the City crew. They've been honestly just brilliant. And we actually work very closely with some of the folks there too, and have since we've been building our media company and this PulpitAI. They're incredible people. So
they're super, super cool. I've interfaced them a little bit, and it's awesome. So let's walk through this idea, because I got talk about the language model and the way y'all do this, because I was on Twitter just saying, hey, I just sent this through. Can't wait for PulpitAI. And you said, send me the audio. I'll run it through for you. So I took the same sermon. It's a few years old. It was from a Song of Songs series. And I spent an hour messing around with ChatGPT. I've linked to that. All it gave me on some show notes for the last podcast. Sent the same thing to you. And like what I got was dramatically different. I mean, just massively different. So talk through just like, what is it looking for? How is it unique? Because y'all are doing proprietary stuff. Just talk about the difference. I mean, we know it's easier, but it's also, I found it to be so much more theologically strong.
Well, and here's why it's interesting. So, there's two things. So the model that we are using, we are working with some really close collaborators of ours who actually didn't start out building a language model in this way. What they started out building was an AI podcast player. So about 4 years ago, they started building an app just like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you could download it and you could listen to it. And it was essentially learning the way that you listened to podcast episodes, when you paused it, when you turned it on, when you plugged headphones in, where you listened to it. And it was learning all of that. And so essentially for, 4 years, they had been gathering data of how people listen to podcasts. And so kind of as a bit of a pivot, kind of in the crazy market that we've been in for the last couple of years, and the podcasting industry has gone through a sort of a boom, 2016, 2017, 2018, and then a bit of a consolidation. So these guys who are absolutely brilliant said, hey, what can we do with all this data that we've been collecting? And so what they've been really looking to do is build really the world's best, audio extractor to kind of understand, based upon how people listen to this audio, this is the kind of content that needs to be repurposed from it. The other thing that it does is it doesn't add any color, right? So it's not, obviously, like even ChatGPT yesterday, I most of the time, because I'm, quasi dyslexic, and so if I'm going to like write a tweet, I'll just copy and paste it into ChatGPT and say, hey, can you do a spelling and a grammar check for me? And almost every time, it doesn't just do that; it refines what I write, and it puts its color or it changed a word here or there. And so ours right now doesn't do that. It basically takes what you put in, and it's going to put out, pretty closely associated words from that. So that's really important to us, especially with kind of all the theological implications of how this is being used. And we ultimately would love to have our own sort of like theological LLM that is embedded in that as well, so that we're helping make sure that the content that's being put out is theologically sound.
Yeah.
So
Well, and what I noticed about it was, because I mean, I did the Chat GPT Song of Songs sermon for a reason, was because I had been hearing that you could see bias with certain ideas in Chat GPT. It's like, okay, let me throw this in here and just see how it fires. And it did not pop up any of the bias I'd heard people talking about over a handful of issues. And so I was like, okay, I'm happy about this. And I was blown away, because like, okay, it's doing, this is good stuff. This is usable. It got confused on the prompts though, and that sort of stuff. And I've been kind of rolling this myself for the last few months using a machine learning transcribe tool, and its transcriptions are janky. Between my redneck and all other things, like it's just janky.
Yep.
And so I didn't see anything wrong in it, but when I was looking at it, like there's a tone that you talked about that it clearly looks like AI. And then I read y'all's printout, and I was like, what's wild about this is it sounds like me. And so just the technology. So you said, so what is this about? Some people who might have some issues with this, thinking this is a relatively new technology. So it sounds like even with what y'all are using, this has been years in the development. It's just connecting all the dots together.
That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, this has been developed by, two guys who are quite literally like machine learning software engineers, who have been building this for years now. Yeah, this isn't just sort of like what we're building is not just like a wrapper around GPT or some kind of like open source language model. That's, I think for us, that's what we think is kind of the secret sauce of our product, is that it is a product that has been built specifically for extracting ideas from audio, and soon to be video, probably in the next 90 days or so.
Yeah. So what's crazy is like I'm going back now and looking at the readout I got, the output. The way that the output is engaging with scripture is wild. And like the references and that kind of stuff. I mean, I know we're not going to get too technical here, and we probably not have the time to explain it, but like the AI is engaging with scripture.
Right. Yeah.
How did y'all pull that off?
Well, look, a lot of it is prompting, so when the beautiful thing about a model is when you are working with the people who created the model, they know how to prompt the model.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, and that's the big part of what we want to do, right? Is we obviously look, there are really smart people who are going to want to hack their own prompts. And I love doing all that. I'm all about it. But
Yeah.
I think what we want to do is say, hey, we know, at least we think we know what church communications teams and pastors want. We know what they don't want. And so we know the model that's been built. And so we want to perfect the prompting of that model to extract what we want it to extract. Now, it's not perfect, right? So a couple of weeks ago, we ran, in fact, our church was doing a series on the incarnation, and we ran it through the model. And the model came back with a lot of references to Christmas, right?
Yeah.
And we sort of noticed like, oh, wait, okay, the message wasn't at all about Christmas, but for whatever reason, it pulled that word incarnation, and it sort of connected some stuff. So part of why we're releasing this so slowly in beta is because that's some of the stuff that we want to iron out and that we do want to fix. Because again, when you have, I mean, we have churches that have signed up from every denomination, 20 countries, different streams of church and ministry. There will be some stuff that gets pushed through there that will come back a bit wonky. So we really want to even refine that even more. But yeah, it really is. It is a model that is trained to engage with ideas. It's not trained to pull out viral moments. It's not trained even in the highlights that we can deliver.
Yeah.
It's not trying to give a quick 60-second highlight. It's going to pull out a full idea. And if that idea takes 90 minutes to 120, or 90 seconds to 120 seconds to develop, that's what it's going to pull out. Not just a quick, 30-second highlight. So
yeah. So so that side of it's, I love it because it's so much bigger. And I like when you talk about the prompt, like trying to prompt hack, because that seems to be what you see so many creatives, and I mean, influencers isn't necessarily the right word, but like the Twitter influencers, it's all this promise to hack the prompts, perfect prompts, perfect prompts, perfect prompts. And I've got a friend of mine. He's the communications director at the Louisiana Conference Methodist Church. Todd Ross Snake, you're probably listening. Todd's awesome. Todd loves AI. Todd is a prompt nerd, and has figured them out as a communication director. Really, this allows you to get significant, powerful AI without having to worry about prompts whatsoever at all.
Absolutely. And there will be there is a GPT like, yeah, totally. And that's the thing, like we're going to provide a suite of different outputs, but there's also a prompt in the product. So you can go in and you can prompt it whatever you want. Now it's not going to be, at least yet, like sort of a chat bot. Because if we do that, we do want it to be framed theologically in the way that we would want, right? When you can go the distance with a chat bot for 90 minutes, that's where some stuff can get a bit wonky, especially if that chat bot has, like you said, whatever. So right now we will launch with one, like, so we'll have a prompt that you can type in whatever you want and it'll give you something back. And then probably in the next 30 days or so, that'll grow to 2 prompts per input. So, and at a time, meaning you could say, so, and we've been playing with that now. So, hey, using the themes from this sermon, please write 10 group discussion questions. It will deliver those. And then now you can say, and now add scripture references from the sermon, and it'll add that. So it'll be a 2 prompt system that you can then reset. So people will be able to, prompt hack within the product. But really we want to make it as easy for churches as possible. And I totally get that. Like there's going to be really smart people that use our outputs and go play with Jasper or ChatGPT or something else to kind of do other things with it. And we're totally fine with that. We actually think that that's a great way to use, at least version 1 of our product.
Yeah. So right now, so we've kind of had the more nerdy high people who are into this kind of thing conversation. But for the pastor, they've got 80 or 90 people. They just want to learn to leverage their sermon and leverage social better. They upload their audio into PulpitAI. What do they then get?
Yeah. So you upload it. They will get, and we're still hashing out based upon, so we've had about 600 people fill out a survey on how they would want to use this and what features they most want. So you'll upload it. It will automatically deliver you certain outputs. Right now, those are basically like a social post, a 5-day Bible reading plan and devotional based upon your sermon, discussion questions, and then probably a summary of some kind.
Yeah.
And then there will be pre-built buttons that have thing like an email, a Twitter thread, a blog post, right? And you'll just be able to click the button and it'll output that to you. Where there will be highlights, so quotes,
Yeah.
from that sermon as well. And so, yeah, right now there's about 25 or 30 different outputs that
Yeah.
it will automatically give to you with the click of a button. And then, of course, we'll have that sort of like GPT Lite feature in there that will allow you to prompt it for, whatever you want. And our goal is to continue to, change what those immediate deliverables are based upon how churches are using it and how they want to use it, So those are things that we can change and add really quickly. So for us, that's kind of why we're doing such a long testing period with it.
Just those basic outputs are game changers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just that enough, from what you sent me, from what I have, it's like that's when you look at the amount of time investment you get and what comes out of it, it's like these are all no brainers. So how long do you expect? I know, I mean, when the service releases to folks, so these are the questions folks are going to ask me when the service releases to folks, and someone uploads their audio into there, how long are y'all anticipating it taking before those outputs come?
Oh yeah, those outputs will come in less than 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's what I was thinking. I think that's kind of the piece is, oh, this is great, but if it's going to take 8 hours, like, no, this is quick.
Yeah. No, this will be within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You'll be able to upload. You'll be able to upload, get the prompts, have it all ready to go. Yeah.
That's what I said. I think so much of this where I'm finding it helpful, and as a person who is like a leader of leaders, and as a person who professionally is one of the things I'm the resource person. People call me and say, hey, I'm trying to figure this out. What do I have? I'm sitting down with people constantly talking about communication plans. Like this is a tool that I can see be like just leading forward, like, hey, you want to get your social better. This is the quickest and easiest way to jump into the content. So you don't have to just have the pixelated stuff that the secretary finds off of Pinterest and load that up there. So, yeah. So like, what are you, just kind of to wrap some stuff up with, like, what are the ways that y'all have seen this? Cause I know you're developing this in your own local congregation. And, people might say, well, Chad, they're in Los Angeles, but you said you're a multi-site church of about 500 people.
Yeah.
That's a collection of normal sized churches.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, our average church service size is about 100 people.
Yeah. So, I mean, this y'all are, I mean, the median sized church in America is 65 people. Like you've seen this now as a test use case in several different normal sized churches. Like, how have you seen this not change the staff side or the communication design side? Like, how has this changed just the average person who comes to your church?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we're still working at it in real time, right? Figuring out how exactly this is used. I think, there are, I think psychologically, every person in a local community wants to hear from that pastor, right? Yeah. So I just think the signal too. So, one of the reasons we're doing this is because, so Jake, who hosts one of the podcasts we do called Good Theology, it has an audience that's worldwide, but the most important audience is like, it's a discipleship mechanism for our church every single week, right?
Yeah.
And so I think just a congregation getting to go, oh, wow, this is like, I heard my pastor preach a sermon on Sunday, and then I got an email on Sunday night that just like told me what the scriptures were to read and a way to reflect on it and a question to write. Like that just, in my mind, connect you to your local body even more. And so I think right now we've got about 90 guys going through this formation process, and we're not doing it through PulpitAI, but they're on this like 30-day journey of like going through the book of Timothy together. And like, I look at all the comments that is going on in this thread, and I'm like, man, a local church using content together at the same time is a really, really powerful thing. So the other thing that we've done that's kind of fun is, a couple months ago, we were doing a sermon series on anxiety. and we fed the one of the sermons through PulpitAI and asked it to generate a casual sounding text message using the themes from the sermon that a friend could use to invite their friend to church that a congregation member could use to invite their friend to church next week. And it spit it out. And so, that Tuesday on our weekly email we sent out to our church, we said, hey, by the way, this is a really good template on what, a text message inviting a friend to church next week could look like, so just little stuff like that. That's just kind of fun little outputs to help the church wrap their heads around, like, the missional aspect of it as well.
Well, what I love so much, and I didn't know this before we jumped on the call today. Uh, this is so incarnational, and it's a tool for churches rather than outsourcing all of this discipleship in the almost like the ontology of discipleship is instead saying I'm going back to something my own bishop said last month is we already have every single thing we need inside of us.
Exactly right.
And it's just this deep, deep belief in the power of the local church. And so in this thing that some folks that think is frightening, it's almost de-incarnational. We see y'all's work. There's a level of recreation and almost like stewarding, like Genesis 2 kind of language, saying, hey, no, this is how we can flip this around and actually make this potentially one of the most deeply contextual and incarnational resources your church has.
100%.
It's just right there. Yeah.
100%. And I think, every pastor's different and the way that they're going to want to use this is different. But, I've had some conversations with some pastors who were like, this is crazy. Like, you mean I can hit record on my iPhone on Wednesday when something crazy has happened in the news, and I can talk about it for 25 minutes with a staff member, and I can talk about how we're thinking about it and what we're supposed to do about it and how to make sure our minds are staying right about whatever it is. You mean I can upload that and turn that into an email that I can send to my church? And that's a really powerful thing. So like every pastor can now become a resource to their congregation in however they want to be. So I think that's the cool thing, right? Pastors are going to use it in a bunch of different ways, really as a mixture of like their passion and gift mix and vision. And I think that's what we really want to do is come alongside pastors and go, how do you want to use this? What are the most valuable ways in which you can use this? And that's our big passion behind it. So I think that's totally right on.
Well, dude, I love it. I'm stoked. I'm excited. I think I said somewhere I might start podcasting, preaching again, just so I can use PulpitAI.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. But I mean, we'll see how Glenmore, Louisiana, all 1,600 people in the community. That might be a good use case.
Well, I think I think if I can just say one more thing, that the tools, and part of what we want to do is resource churches to find these different tools out there. So like, there's a lot of pastors that go like you said, I have 60 people. I don't even have a podcast. It's like, well, for $25, you could get a microphone for your iPhone. And then for $8 a month, there's a service that you can upload that audio to that will edit it and make it sound nice. And you know what I mean? I mean, it's the barrier to entry is so low now. That we want to help pastors realize that and leverage that, because you're exactly right. I mean,
I'm coaching a guy. Yeah, I'm coaching a guy right now in North Carolina that their internet was too bad at the church to have a live stream. So he records his sermon with his iPhone, no microphone, puts it on the pulpit, uses Anchor, which doesn't cost a thing. And there's 20 something people in his church. And his sermon podcast gets 2,000 downloads a month. Like, that's the world we live in now.
Exactly.
I mean, this is amazing and beautiful. Michael, I'm excited about this. Is there anything you want to say before we just wrap up to let folks know about how they can find you, find out more about PulpitAI? The stuff will be in the show notes too, but just how do you want to close out with the folks?
Yeah, I think, our website's pulpitai.com. You can find us on Twitter, PulpitAI. I think Instagram is pulpit.ai. And please reach out, sign up for this beta, this beta launch. One big thing we're passionate about is community. So we're going all in on like, we want to build a community of pastors and learn how they're using it and why they're using it. And so I think we're very much building this in public. And so we want all the thoughts and all the ideas and the critiques and the feedback. So don't ever feel shy. My email is mw@pulpitai.com. Feel free to reach out. Would love to hear from all of you. Hopefully we'll have this thing launched to everyone on our beta list in the next 3 weeks or so. And we'll probably honestly spend a significant amount of time, 60 to 90 days, with just those people to really learn how they're using it and all of that. So, would love to hear from you and help serve any way we can.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Chad, it's been good to chat with you, man, and good to meet you in person.
Thanks. All right, things wrapping up there, and I told y'all this was a good conversation. This was solid stuff. And, in the last few days since I've had this conversation with him, I'm seeing them announce rollouts for stuff for PulpitAI. And this is the thing. You might be saying, Chad, I just serve this normal-sized church. It doesn't really matter. This isn't interesting. This isn't my context. I want you to think about jumping onto PulpitAI. I want you to think about what it might mean to give you more margin, but also, friends, the way this is working is going to be able to enhance your ministry in the way that we want to here at Productive Pastor, to give you more margin for effectiveness, to give you more margin for health, while also to have a thriving, healthy, contextual, appropriate ministry right where you are. So cruise over to the show notes. The big links to all the awesome stuff that Michael talks about. Michael does there, revshadbrooks.com/PPP/065. And I hope you are as excited about the release of PulpitAI as I am. Thanks. See you next episode.